The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles. Although, actually, Dom,
Yes.
I'm not going to record this podcast today.
Why? Why not?
Well,
You're talking into a microphone. What are you doing?
No. What we're going to do is you can do this podcast today, but
Right.
it will fail.
Well, yeah, sure. If it's just me.
Yeah, exactly. And tomorrow we'll record the podcast again, and I'll do that one.
Are you by any chance, Charles, making an analogy with a contemporary event where you've translated the logic of something into the world of podcasting? Might you be referring, Charles, to the very sensible suggestion by Peter Dutton
Yeah.
that if the voice referendum were to fail, an object to which he's been working single-handedly for months now,
Yes.
he will have a second referendum
Yes.
to change the constitution to recognise Indigenous people.
Yeah, but see, no, that's exactly what I'm saying is if we record tomorrow on my terms, it'll be better than recording now.
More after this. So this is what's happened. Peter Dutton has come up over the weekend and I think made everybody unhappy with this proposal. He's made the people who don't want to give them a thing, those ungrateful First Nations people, he's made them unhappy.
Yes.
He's made the Liberals who support the Voice people like Julie and Lisa can't believe that he said this. It's like, it's not that I'm opposed to recognition.
Yeah.
It's just the form of recognition where you have to do something.
No, well, it's the form of recognition that is driven by what Indigenous people want, right? Like what he's objecting to is that, like, he doesn't like the fact that it was come up with by someone other than a white man.
Well, Charles, no, I mean, I think to be fair to Peter Dutton, I think what Aboriginal people want is entirely by the by. I don't think that's in at all.
Yeah, sorry.
I think what this is to do with
doesn't even figure
is
in.
that it's Albo's idea. Even though First Nations people came and said we would like a voice, a treaty, and the Marakata reconciliation process, they went through a huge process to work that out. And Albo said, "Okay, I will give you those things if I become Prime Minister." Starting with the voice. It doesn't matter. It's just that Albo thought of it. If Dutton had thought of it, while they're in government, he'd be doing it.
Well,
he doesn't care about the detail.
This is the thing. So Dutton's saying, no, it's really important that we have a constitution that recognises Indigenous people. And then the question arose on the weekend, so why, in your 10 years in office, did you not think to just do that constitutional referendum while you had the chance?
Because it would have failed, because constitutional referendums never get up in Australia. And Scott Morrison wasn't in favour of that. He wouldn't have wanted to do that. Yeah. But this is the thing. You've got to realise...
He's the most... Peter Dutton, for all his sort of I am pro-Indigenous people, is the most anti-pro-Indigenous person I know.
Well,
you know what I mean?
But pro what? This is the thing.
Yeah.
Even John Howard wanted to change the constitution to, in some small way, acknowledge that when the ships turned up, the place wasn't empty.
It's amazing how, as soon as they lose power, they want to do these amazing things.
Well, do you remember he worked on the preamble with Aidan Ridgway? It was the same thing, really. They wanted to do the Republic referendum.
Yes.
And how you can have your referendum on that, but also we're going to have this little preamble. I think Les Murray wrote it.
Yes, and it was
a white man.
I think it went. I remember it actually. It was. Come on, Aussie, come on, come on, come on. Wasn't
Actually,
it?
I think it was more like Timey Kangaroo. Anyway, we can't put any more of that in because I have to pay Rolf Harris's estate royalties and fuck that. So, no, the thing is he wants to acknowledge the reality, but then not do anything. This is the difference. To be fair to Peter Dutton, it's a very clear position. We want to acknowledge that there were other people here when we arrived. Yeah. But we wouldn't want to do anything.
And maybe the preamble should be, sucks to be you. Hey, yeah, you were here first. Sucks to be you.
Finders, keepers, First Nations weepers. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So Peter Dutton would be very happy to have another referendum.
Yes. But can I just say, because I think the other hilarious thing is that Peter Dutton's other criticism of The Voice is that it's all inside bubble, inside Canberra.
Oh, yeah, it is a very Canberra bubble point.
And I must say...
Uluru being inside the Canberra bubble.
The idea of having yet another referendum and getting everyone to turn up yet again for some sort of AEC-driven...
yes-no thing.
...vote is such a Canberra solution to the problem. So sort of like, I know what we'll do. We'll do more politics. We'll have more opportunity for racist people to be reply guys on Twitter.
You know what I'm surprised by, given the history of the coalition on these issues? I'm honestly surprised he's not aiming for a postal survey.
Yes.
I mean, we know that's the most slow and torturous way to do anything. Mate,
plebiscite.
Albo's getting us all to turn up on a particular place at October the 14th to actually write yes or no on a piece of paper.
Yes.
But wouldn't it be better if they just did it via snail mail? Posted everybody a ballot. It wasn't mandatory to fill it out because it doesn't actually matter. Like, with same-sex marriage where you could just ignore it and the whole thing would maybe go away. Or it didn't go away. Postal survey.
Yes.
They've already invented the worst way to make a decision and the slowest and most hurtful way to make a decision. I'm astonished that's not what's being advocated here.
You know what they need to do? They need... Because the polls aren't looking good, Dom.
For The Voice, no.
No, the polls... Like, the news poll came out yesterday, on Monday, and it was, 36% now support yes and 51% support no.
I mean, that's not looking good. You wouldn't say it's looking good. But, Charles, that poll was taken, this is the key point, before everything changed. Before Farnham. Before John Farnham got up and gave the You're the Voice song to the Yes campaign.
I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about this, Dom, because I admit it's a rocking ad. It's a great, it touches all the right sort of points in the ad and stuff like that and makes you realise, there has been progress in Australia, which I never realised until I'd seen that ad. But it does mean we're going to have wall-to-wall You're the Voice for the next 6 weeks. Like, that is literally going to be the soundtrack of the next 6 weeks.
I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, this is the first good thing John Farnham has ever done in his entire career. I was overseas, right? I lived in England in 1986 and 1987, which is a country that had the good sense to subtly suggested John Farnham that he could just fuck off to another country and never come back. And I'd never heard Whispering Jack, I'd never heard any of this sort of stuff. I came back to an Australia that was absolutely swamped with Farnham mania, where everyone was just singing You're the Voice all the time, where Whispering Jack had been number one on the charts forever. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this? This is the worst song in the history of the world. Like, this is basically someone showing off at karaoke, only you've made it the number one song in the country. And by the way, we don't have karaoke yet. Like, just when you think it couldn't get more histrionic and stupid, there's a fucking bagpipe solo, Charles. It's a bagpipe solo. So, I mean, couldn't they have said, oh, look, Farnsey, thank you so much for offering it to us.
Yes.
This is not about you. This is about First Nations artists. We might actually go with
Yothu Yindi and do
or Archie Roach.
Treaty.
Well,
oh,
Treaty.
No, don't mention Treaty. Don't mention
you
Treaty.
You know the original lyrics of
Treaty,
yeah. But it's Treaty, Treaty now. And then when they remixed it, they took the now bit out. Did you know that?
That's really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. So it's like Treaty, which is catchier, but takes away the sort of point. So no one wants to say Treaty Now, because Treaty Now is going to make the case, except for the First Nations people who've asked for it through the Uluru process. That's what the No campaign is saying. It'll be a treaty.
Can I counteract that point, Dom, with it might actually be easier to argue a bigger ask? Like,
well,
I wonder,
this point, yes, because no one still knows what the voice is. Whereas a treaty, you do actually know what that means.
Yeah, it might actually be easier to just go, yeah. What we want is a treaty because we want to actually resolve our difference. We want to recognise that Indigenous people were here before white people, and then we want to have a treaty that actually helps concretely come to an agreement about what that actually means.
But this is the whole point, right? Is that once you acknowledge in the Constitution, and particularly if the voice form of recognition is creating an institution. It's not actually a long statement about the fact that there were First Nations people here before we arrived. But presumably once you put it in the Constitution and say, look, when the First Fleet turned up, there was someone here, the whole of Australia becomes illegal at that point, right? Like in international law, if there's no terra nullius, you need a treaty, don't you?
Yes, you're right.
Like,
I never
if
thought
you
about
say
that.
legally there were people here,
Yes.
then it is an invasion and it's never been resolved. So the only way to resolve it would be a treaty. So what Peter Dutton is doing is arguing for a treaty. He wants a treaty.
He wants a treaty.
That's what they call him,
Yeah.
Mr. Treaty.
Mr. Treaty.
Peter Dutton, the man. Because once you've recognised it, you've got to fix it.
And what his plan will be is to become Prime Minister, and then as soon as he loses power again, he'll then say, oh, yeah, let's have a treaty. You know what I mean? Like,
no, you won't do it in your first
No,
term.
well, there's too much other work to do for, fixing Labor's big black hole.
Big black hole.
Yeah.
More in a moment, by the way.
The Chaser Report. News a few days after it happens.
So it wouldn't happen in a first Dutton term, but
No.
surely Dutton's only getting one term.
Oh
So-
no, but and also you can't do it in the second term.
No,
because
and I'm not saying consecutive. I mean, after Dutton loses the election
Yes.
to the plebiscite government, he'll presumably go to the backbench forever. So the time
I
to
don't
advocate.
look, just on that plebiscite point, I'm
Yeah.
not sure that Australians in what we're talking probably 2027
Yeah.
are going to be wanting to elect a pro-coal and gas government. So I'm not sure it'll be a plebiscite government. I think it's more likely to be a Chandler Mather government.
Chandler Mather. All right. So you're so optimistic about the next. Has the last 5 years told you nothing?
I'm reading dystopian fiction at the moment where I'm increasingly convinced that neo-fascist geoengineering is going to be the way out of climate change.
Well, gotta have something. So Charles, I'll tell you when Peter Dutton will advocate for the voice and for the treaty, because it's very clear what the answer to that question is. The moment he has left politics,
Yes.
I call it the Turnbull model, right?
Yeah, the Turnbull model.
The moment you're
Malcolm
there.
Fraser model.
Yeah.
The John Hewson model.
The only people who stuck to their guns are Tony Abbott and John Howard. Nothing will convince them to do a thing for Aboriginal people, no matter that Howard's been out for decades and he still isn't going to give them
I
any.
think actually Howard's gotten worse, hasn't he? Like, didn't he want recognition for Aboriginal people, and now it's sort of like, nah.
Only because he felt he had to try and win the election.
Right.
He
Yeah,
wasn't
right.
committed to it. What are you talking about? But so that's the thing. And Malcolm Turnbull wrote the most eloquent piece for The Guardian of all places, I think it was, about how he couldn't possibly, or was it the Herald? So one of those two lefty rags, how he couldn't have possibly done it as Prime Minister. The country wasn't ready.
No.
It just was very hard.
Oh, yes.
And I remember him using the term, it will be a third chamber of Parliament.
Yes.
The exact argument that
Yes.
Dutton is using now, made by Turnbull. But Charles, he had no choice. The nation wasn't ready.
No,
he was ready.
No,
we weren't ready.
No, exactly. The thing is, because the long stretch of history from 1788 through to 2015, nation not ready. Then 8 years later, nation definitely ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel for Turnbull. He was ahead of us on every issue.
Oh,
if we
yes.
just let him have his way.
Well, yeah. Like the idea that we want to dial up speeds for our internet rather than fibre optic.
I mean, he
speeds.
wanted us to have fibre optics,
Yes.
but we weren't ready.
And you look at the kids nowadays, and you're constantly saying, "Get off the internet, get off the internet." Well, that's what Malcolm Turnbull was telling us 10 years
he worked
ago.
very hard to nobble the NBN.
Yes.
And sure, he was forced to do that by Tony Abbott as a punishment of having opposed him, but which was a very delicious punishment, by the way. If we ever do have a neo-fascist state where people are punished in cruel fashions that are designed to be as torturous as possible, Tony Abbott should run that system just based on what he did to Turnbull.
Yes.
Like Turnbull, who boasted that he'd brought the internet basically to Australia with Aussie Mail, right? Like Mr. Big Tech visionary, made to personally ruin the NBN, step by step. Just imagine the soul-crushing thing of him having to turn out next to all those big reels that weren't going nowhere and giving shit internet to everybody. What an amazing fate. Anyway, look, we've got a few weeks left for The Voice to be won. They've started putting ads out there. Is Australia finally going to start paying attention and say yes? Or, as seems more likely at this point, is Australia finally going to start paying attention and go, no, we're not going to. Why would we do that?
Well, I think let's break it down state by state, right, Don? Because everyone's looking at this as the nation has to decide. And sure, constitutionally, they actually do. It needs to be a majority of people in
Double
a majority of
majority.
states. Yeah. But, the crucial thing is, I think you can fairly say that Victoria is a sort of communist hellhole.
Well,
and
it's Chairman Dan.
Chairman Dan, they'll deliver the voice.
They'll be a yes.
Yeah. And things were looking a little bit wobbly in New South Wales, but I think that's now shifted. I think we're going to get New South Wales across the line.
You're very optimistic about Western Sydney, but okay. Yep.
No, but this is the thing. There are a whole lot of migrant communities who, during the gay marriage plebiscite, were very anti-gay marriage.
That's what I was thinking.
Right?
Of.
It was very
So
conservative.
you think on this one they'll be yes?
But actually, they tend to be far more pro-Indigenous recognition. is my understanding.
Well,
So I think-
presumably because if you've recently arrived to this country, as many people in Western Sydney have, you basically first thought is, why the fuck can't you do a better job with that? That's shit.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas we, having been here for generations, are used to doing nothing.
Oh, no, exactly. We've got this amazing blind spot right in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
And then, so then you go around and, you know, launching the campaign in South Australia, I think that's enough.
I think the mere fact that Albo turned up in South Australia,
Yeah.
I go, thank you, Mr. Albanese, we'll vote yes.
So there you go. You get
that's
South
3.
Australia. Then,
Okay.
then Tasmania. Look, the Tasmanian Indigenous community is split, but I actually think that that's probably a win for the Yes campaign because presumably there'll be a whole lot of racists who see Indigenous people saying vote no and go, well, I'm going to vote the opposite of those Indigenous people.
I see. That's interesting logic. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Tassie might be the 4th. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
the
so
one
there
thing
you
we
go.
know for sure is it won't be Queensland.
No.
Certainly not Queensland.
Thomas Mayo was on the Shop podcast, which was on this feed a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And he said Queensland in the bag.
Okay.
I know.
All right, well-
I think he was just pretending.
All right. WA. I mean, WA.
But see, this is where you go, do we really need Western Australia?
I mean, never. Oh, except for their money.
the money, the
And the resources.
Yeah.
I mean, the
could we-
best thing to do with Western Australia, very clearly,
Turn it
would be
in.
to let them secede.
Yes.
Let them secede. Let them split off and become their own country. Conquer that country.
Yes.
And not give them...
Subjugate.
Yes. So make them a vassal colony without rights.
Well, even just a territory. I think this
They
is
could
the
be a
thing.
territory, that's true.
Because Northern Territory and ACT voters don't get to be part of the majority of states' calculations, right? So
Yeah.
their vote is actually half, which is ironic, right? Because the biggest concentration in any polity of Indigenous voters is, of course, the Northern Territory.
That's why. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why it's ignored and they haven't been given statehood. Yeah, of course.
So if we just made, I think there's a really good, maybe that's the next referendum. And I think a majority of states would get behind this idea is to make Western Australia not a state.
That's a very good idea.
Yes.
And then also, you may have seen that a Labor politician from New Zealand, in his retirement speech, said, come on, we should become a state of Australia.
Oh, yes, I did see
And
that.
if they came on board, that's a place that actually knows how to have a treaty.
Yes.
And knows how to have reconciliation.
Yes.
Certainly far more than we do. So if they can come in time for the referendum, and they'll have to move quickly. There's only a few weeks. But they'd be a definite yes state.
Well, the way it works in our constitution is all that has to happen is there's a sort of standing provision in the constitution that New Zealand can just say, yep, we're in.
We're in.
And they're in.
You know what they should do?
Yeah,
Just
what?
come in and then go out again. just for this one vote.
Come in, go out. Come in, get rid of Western Australia as well.
Yes,
Do the
yes,
recognition, get rid of Western Australia. Then that's a great idea.
They could be Eastern Australia.
We should get Anne Twomey on the podcast, constitutional
good.
expert, to find out how quickly it could be done. Like, is it the case that if New Zealand agreed tomorrow to be part of Australia,
yeah.
they could vote as a state?
You know what? We really need to do this before the Rugby World Cup. That's what we really need. It's our only chance. And Toomey, talk us through it. All right, we've solved everything in this podcast, I think. Good for us.
Yes.
I mean, they said white men couldn't do it, and they were right until we proved them wrong. Okay, our Kiwis from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network. Any feedback, if you listen this far, email us podcast@chaser.com.au. And thank you. Yes campaign, that's where you can email your thanks for our help in this matter.
See ya.